Welcome to Today I Will Take You on a Journey into My Own World. The Lake at the End of the World. A story of a wolf pup, a dying elder, and a night that changed everything. He was dying. She didn't understand that yet. She was too young to know what dying looked like, but she knew something was wrong because he hadn't moved in 2 days. The pup had no name because wolves don't name themselves. But if you had watched her long enough, you might have called her Ash, for the pale silver-brown fur that caught the moonlight like smoke, for the way she moved through the world as though she were not entirely certain she was supposed to be in it. She was 4 months old. She had been born in a den beneath the roots of a great cedar, the last of a litter of 5. The others had gone, 2 to a winter that arrived too early, 2 with the pack when it moved north following the elk herds. She had been left with him, the old one, the one they called in the low language of howls and posture something that translated roughly as the wolf who remembered when the mountains were young. She had not been left with him out of cruelty. She had been left with him because she was the smallest, and the journey north was long, and he could not make it, and someone had to stay. The alpha female, her mother, had pressed her nose to the pup's face for a long moment before the pack disappeared into the tree line. The pup had tried to follow. The old wolf had blocked her path with his body, not roughly, just firmly, the way a door is firm when it is simply closed and not locked against you. Then it had been just the 2 of them, and the lake. The lake was a perfect circle, which lakes are not supposed to be, and the water was so still and so dark that it reflected the stars with a fidelity that made the sky seem to be below them and the cold black depths above. The forest pressed close on every side, enormous trees that had been old when the pack's oldest stories were young. There was no wind. There were no other sounds except the occasional crack of a branch somewhere deep in the woods and the soft lapping of water at the shore. The old wolf lay at the water's edge, his chin on his forepaws, his silver-gray coat dull in a way it had not been when he was strong. His breathing was slow and deliberate, the breathing of someone concentrating on a task that should be automatic. His eyes were open. They were pale gold, and in the starlight they caught the reflection of the Milky Way that arched above them, so that it looked as though the galaxy itself was alive somewhere behind his gaze. The pup stood in the shallows. The water was cold, intensely cold, but she did not move out of it because the cold was something to feel, and feeling something was better than the strange, heavy stillness that had settled over the night. She touched her nose to his. This was what she had. She was 4 months old. She had no wisdom, no experience, no understanding of death or time, or the weight of a life that had lasted longer than the oldest trees at the forest's edge. She had a nose, and she pressed it to his, and she felt his breath. Slow, slow, warm, real, against her face. He opened his eyes more fully and looked at her. What passed between them was not a thought in the way humans think of thoughts. It was more like weather, a front moving through, a pressure change, the specific quality of air before a storm. Wolves communicate in frequencies that don't have words, in the grammar of bodies and breath, and the direction of a gaze held 1 second longer than necessary. What the old wolf gave the pup in that moment was not information. It was orientation, the way a compass is oriented. the way a seed is oriented toward light before it has any way of knowing that light exists. He was showing her the lake. Not the lake as a thing. She could see the lake. She was standing in it. But the lake as a place. The difference is significant. A thing exists. A place means something. He was encoding in her through the ancient animal transmission of presence and attention. The knowledge that this water was safe, this shore was shelter, that she could drink here and rest here, and that the forest around it was her territory now, hers to learn and hers to keep. A meteor crossed the sky, then another. The pup looked up, startled, and the old wolf made a sound, not quite a vocalization, more like a resonance in his chest, that said, "Yes, this too. Look at this too." She looked. She had never seen a meteor before. The streaks of light, there and gone in a second, left no mark on the darkness, except in the memory of whoever had been watching. She watched 3 more before she looked back down at him. His breathing had changed, slower, more deliberate, as though each breath was a decision rather than a reflex. She lay down beside him. She was small enough that she could tuck herself against his chest without effort, and she did, pressing the full length of her small body against the long, slow warmth of him. She could feel his heartbeat. It was very steady. It was the steadiest thing she had ever felt. Steadier than the ground, steadier than the trees in wind, steadier than anything in the 4 months of her experience of the world. The stars moved overhead in the way they do when you are still long enough to notice. Not dramatically, not with the speed of comets, but with the patient revolution of things that have been doing this for longer than there have been eyes to watch them. Sometimes, across the lake, an owl called. The forest answered with nothing, which is its own kind of answer. The old wolf's heartbeat slowed. She felt it slowing the way you feel a song moving toward its final notes. Not a cessation, just a transition into something quieter. And then it was quiet. The pup did not move for a long time. She breathed in the scent of him, which was the first scent she had known, and which smelled like cedar and cold water and the deep animal warmth of pack, of belonging. She breathed it in as though she could keep it. Eventually, she stood. She shook herself, the way young wolves do when they are resetting, when something has happened that is too large to process, and the body takes over and says, "Here, do this simple physical thing. Come back to yourself." She looked at the lake. The stars were still there. The Milky Way arched overhead, unhurried and indifferent, and unutterably beautiful. The water reflected it perfectly. She put her nose to the water and drank. The water was cold and clean and tasted of minerals and the distant memory of snowmelt. She drank until she wasn't thirsty anymore. Then she sat back on her haunches and looked up. She was alone. She was 4 months old. She had no pack, no mother, no elder to block her path when she tried to run toward something dangerous. She had the lake. She had the forest. She had the stars, which the old wolf had shown her how to see. Not as lights, but as things worth looking at. She had the orientation he had given her, the compass setting of this place, and what it meant. She lifted her head and howled. It was a terrible howl, technically speaking, thin and wavering, the howl of a pup who has not yet learned the full resonance of what her voice can do. It echoed off the trees and skittered out across the mirror surface of the lake, and the forest absorbed it without reply. She howled again and again, each time a little fuller, a little more certain of itself. Somewhere, very far away, something answered. Not a wolf, she would have known a wolf. Something else. Something old in the forest. Something that had been listening to this lake for longer than wolves had been coming here to drink. Its answer was not a howl. It was more like the sound the trees make when a slow wind moves through them, a collective exhale, a recognition. The pup's ears went up. She looked into the dark trees. Nothing moved. She turned back to the lake, and she lay down at its edge. Not beside the old wolf, but a little way from him, in a spot that was her own. And she watched the stars wheel above her, and she waited for morning. She did not know that she would survive the winter. She did not know that the pack would return in the spring, following the elk herds back south, and that her mother would find her grown and capable, and would press her nose to her face again with an urgency that was not greeting so much as relief. She did not know that she would one day be the one who stayed behind with someone too young and too small to make the journey, and that she would lie at the water's edge and look at that young one and try to transmit, through the grammar of presence and attention, everything she had been given by an old wolf at the edge of a perfect circular lake under a sky full of falling stars. She did not know any of this. She was 4 months old. But she stayed, and that, as it turned out, was enough. The diver. Some things are not meant to be found. She found one, anyway. The thing about the deep ocean is that it doesn't care about you. Not maliciously, not indifferently. It simply operates at a scale where you don't register. That's the part they don't warn you about. Nadia Reyes was 612 meters below the surface of the Pacific Ocean when she saw the light. She was alone in a one-person submersible called the Minnow, which was a joke name for something that cost $11 million and had taken 4 years to build. The Minnow was about the size of a very small car, constructed of titanium and acrylic, and a composite material that did not have a consumer-friendly name, but which was rated to withstand pressures that would convert a human body to something roughly the consistency of toothpaste. Nadia had tested it to 800 meters. She had never gone deeper alone. She was not supposed to be alone. The dive was supposed to have a 2-person crew, Nadia piloting, her research partner Tomas Vera handling the sensor array and recording equipment. But Tomas had appendicitis, which was an extremely inconsiderate thing to develop 48 hours before the most important dive of a 7-year research project. And the weather window was closing. And Nadia was fully certified for solo operation, and the funding body had not paid for another 6 months of waiting. So she was alone. The mission was routine, insofar as anything at 600 meters is routine. She was collecting water and sediment samples from a thermal vent field that had been mapped by an autonomous vehicle the previous year. The vent field was unremarkable by deep-sea standards. No extraordinary temperature readings, no unusual chemical signatures, no evidence of the extraordinary chemosynthetic communities that clustered around the more active vents. It was, scientifically, a footnote. She was there because footnotes needed to be documented. The light was not part of the footnote. It was below her and to the left, roughly 20 meters from the nearest vent structure. It was blue, the specific blue that exists at depth, which is not the blue of sky or sea from above, but something more interior, more self-referential. Blue examining itself in a dark mirror. It was not pulsing. It was not moving. It simply was, in the way that very strange things simply are before you have had time to develop a framework for understanding them. Nadia's first hypothesis, formed in approximately the first 4 seconds, was bioluminescence. The deep ocean is full of bioluminescent organisms, and they produce extraordinary lights. This hypothesis failed immediately on examination. Bioluminescent organisms don't produce a steady, sourceless glow that illuminates an area roughly 8 meters in diameter with the even quality of a lamp. Her second hypothesis was equipment malfunction, a problem with the minnow's exterior lighting system creating some kind of reflection or artifact. She ran the diagnostic. The exterior lights were off. She had turned them off to conserve power during the descent, intending to activate them when she reached the vent field. She had, apparently, not needed to. She turned on the cameras, all 6 of them, covering every angle of the submersible's exterior. She checked the feeds on the monitor array. The light appeared on all 6 cameras. It was real in the sense that cameras registered it. It was real in the sense that her eyes registered it. It was real in every way she could currently measure. She descended toward it. Later, when asked why she had done this, by the review board, by the funding body, by Tomas, who was recovered from his appendicitis and was very upset that he had missed it, she struggled to explain. It was not reckless, she insisted. It was not incautious. She descended slowly, monitoring every reading, maintaining constant communication with the surface support vessel. She followed every protocol. She descended because it was there. And she was a scientist. And the first and most fundamental obligation of science is to look at things. At 50 meters from the light, she could see that it was emanating from the seafloor. Not from any structure on the seafloor, not from the vents, not from any biological or geological feature she could identify. From the floor itself. As though the sediment had become light, or the rock beneath it had. As though something below the ocean's floor was shining upward. At 30 meters, she could see that the light was affecting the water around it. The sediment particles in suspension, there were always particles in suspension at depth, were moving toward the light. Not dramatically, not with any speed that would have alarmed her if she hadn't been measuring it precisely, but measurably, definitively. The particles were moving toward the light at a rate of approximately 2 centimeters per second, in perfect uniformity, from every direction. At 15 meters, the minnow's instruments went strange. Not off, not wrong exactly, strange. The depth gauge read correctly. The pressure readings were nominal. The temperature sensors registered a slight warming, less than 1 degree Celsius, which was unusual but not alarming for a vent field. The oxygen and CO2 readings were correct. What went strange was the time display. The minnow had 4 independent chronometers. They were synchronized before every dive to within a millisecond. They now disagreed with each other by intervals ranging from 3 seconds to 11 minutes. Nadia stared at the chronometers for a long moment. Then she looked at the light. It was very close now. She could see, or thought she could see, depth within it. Not the depth of water, not distance in the ordinary sense, but depth the way a well has depth, the way a hole in something has depth, as though the light were not emanating from a surface, but from very far below one. she reached for the ascent controls, not out of fear, or not only out of fear, out of the correct scientific recognition that she had collected as much data as her instruments could currently capture, that she was alone and beyond immediate rescue range, that the chronometer anomaly represented an unknown variable that she could not assess risk around, and that the most useful thing she could do for science right now was to bring what she had to the surface and then come back with better equipment and Tomas and a much larger support team. She ascended. The light did not follow her. The chronometers, as she rose, gradually resynchronized, not all at once, but in sequence, the way clocks in a household sometimes drift and sometimes, without intervention, drift back. By the time she reached 300 meters, all four agreed within 2 seconds. By the time she surfaced, they were synchronized to the millisecond, as though nothing had happened. The surface crew pulled her out of the water, and she sat on the deck in the thin Pacific sunlight and said nothing for a very long time. She went back. Of course she went back. She went back with Tomas, who had a fresh scar and a magnificent grievance, and with 3 additional crew and an expanded sensor array and a second submersible and a full surface support team. She went back to the exact coordinates, confirmed by GPS to within a meter. The light was gone. The seafloor was ordinary. The sediment was undisturbed. The vent structures were as unremarkable as they had been when she had first been sent to document them as a footnote. The data from her cameras was real. The chronometer anomaly was real. She had time-stamped it. She had the records. The slight temperature increase was in the logs. She had footage of sediment moving uniformly toward a light source. She has never been able to explain any of it. She has also never stopped thinking about the depth within the light. The well depth, the hole in something depth, the sense of something very far below looking up. She has published the data. The paper was received with the particular polite skepticism reserved for findings that are rigorously documented and completely inexplicable. She is working on a follow-up. She is always working on a follow-up. The ocean is 4 kilometers deep in that location. Whatever is at the bottom of it, whatever is below the bottom of it, is not being rushed by her interest or her instruments or her return visits. It was there before she came. It will be there after. It is not malicious. It is not indifferent. It simply operates at a scale where she doesn't register. Most of the time, she finds this thought terrifying. Occasionally, in a way she cannot fully explain to anyone who asks, she finds it the most comforting thing she knows. The house that answered. She asked a question she had no right to ask. The house told her the truth. The first rule of inheriting a house from someone who hated you is, don't go alone. The second rule is, don't go at night. Mara broke both rules on the same evening for the same reason. She needed to know, and she was afraid that if she brought anyone with her, the knowing would be contaminated by their presence. The house had belonged to her grandmother. This was a complicated sentence because her grandmother had also belonged to the house, in a way that people sometimes belong to places so completely that the separation between them blurs. Eleanor Vass had been born in that house, had lived in it for 89 of her 91 years, had filled it with the specific, dense atmosphere of her personality, which was formidable, and had died in the room she had always called the Blue Room, though the walls were white and had always been white, and no one could explain the name. She had left the house to Mara, not to her own daughter, Mara's mother, not to any of the 3 cousins who had visited regularly and brought things and maintained the kind of careful, devoted relationship designed to produce exactly this outcome. To Mara, who had visited twice in her adult life and had spent both visits in a state of subdued mutual hostility with Eleanor that was never addressed directly and never resolved. The will had produced a family crisis of operatic proportions. Mara had said very little. She had accepted the keys, accepted the legal documents, accepted the condition of the bequest, which was that she take physical possession of the property within 30 days or forfeit it. And she had driven the 4 hours from the city on a Tuesday night in November, arriving at 10:15 in rain that was almost, but not quite, sleet. The house was large, larger than she remembered, which she knew was an illusion. Houses don't grow, but which felt true anyway. It was a Victorian structure, 3 stories plus a basement, built in the 1880s by Eleanor's grandfather, who had made money in ways the family no longer discussed with any specificity. It had been maintained impeccably, because Eleanor maintained things impeccably. The paint was fresh. The garden was cut back properly for winter. The gutters were clean. It looked like a house that had been waiting. Mara had a specific question. She had carried it for 15 years, since the event that had produced the subdued mutual hostility between her and her grandmother. The event they had never named and never discussed and never resolved. The event that Mara had tried to forget and had failed to forget, and had eventually given up on forgetting, and had simply incorporated into the structure of herself as an old injury incorporates into bone, altering the shape of the thing that carries it. She did not know what form the answer would take. She knew only that the answer was in the house, that Eleanor had left her the house specifically because the answer was in the house, because the bequest was not generosity and not reparation, but a continuation of the 15-year conversation that had been conducted entirely in silence. She went in. The house smelled of beeswax and old paper and something floral she couldn't identify, something Eleanor had worn or burned or kept in a bowl somewhere. Every lamp she turned on showed her furniture she remembered. The hall table with its claw feet, the grandfather clock that had stopped at 3:47 and been stopped at 3:47 for as long as Mara could recall. The framed photographs ascending the staircase in chronological order, the oldest at the bottom, so that you climbed through time as you went upstairs. She stopped at the photograph she always stopped at. It was halfway up the first flight, at the landing where the staircase turned. It showed 3 women standing in the garden. This garden, the one outside, in summer. Eleanor, young, perhaps 40, in a pale dress. Beside her, a woman Mara had never been able to identify, dark-haired and laughing, turned slightly away from the camera. And on Eleanor's other side, a teenage girl with Mara's own face. Not Mara. She had not been born when this photograph was taken. Her mother, perhaps. Or, and this was the thought she had been turning for 15 years, someone else. She went to the blue room. It was on the 2nd floor at the end of the hall, and it was white, as it had always been. White walls and white curtains and an iron bed and a writing desk and a bookshelf, and nothing else.
Eleanor had slept in here for decades, had died in here. The room had been aired out, and the bed had been stripped, and the surfaces had been wiped down. But it was still her room, in the way rooms are still their occupants' rooms long after the occupants are gone. Arranged by their habits, shaped by their preferences, haunted not by their ghosts, but by their taste. The desk had a drawer. Mara had never been allowed to approach the desk. She opened the drawer. Inside, a bundle of letters tied with kitchen twine, a photograph face down, a small iron key that fit no lock
she could currently identify, and an envelope with her name on it. Not Mara, her full name, the one she never used, the one only Eleanor had ever called her by. She opened the envelope first. The letter was 3 pages in Eleanor's handwriting, which was old-fashioned and precise, and took some effort to read. Mara sat on the edge of the stripped bed and read it in the light of the desk lamp, and the rain hit the window, and the house was very quiet. Eleanor had known. This was the first and most important thing the letter established, with the directness of someone who had spent 91 years not saying something and was now, with the blank freedom of death, saying all of it. She had known from the beginning. She had known about the woman in the photograph, who was not Mara's aunt or cousin, but her grandmother's sister, dead 20 years before Mara was born. She had known why Mara's mother had never talked about her. She had known what had happened, and who had been responsible, and what had been covered over, and what had been lost. She had known, and she had said nothing. And the letter explained this too. Not justified, not defended, simply explained. The time was wrong. Then the time was wrong again. Then Eleanor had grown old, and the telling had seemed at first dangerous, and then difficult, and then habitual in its absence. The way a tooth that hurts eventually just becomes the way your mouth feels. She was sorry. This was on the last page, stated plainly, without elaboration. She was sorry. She had left Mara the house because the house contained the evidence, the letters in the bundle, which were correspondence between her sister and a man who had done a great deal of harm and faced no consequences for it. And because Mara deserved to have the evidence. Because Mara deserved to know. Because the knowing was hers, had always been hers, and Eleanor had held it too long. The small iron key, the letter said, opened a lockbox in the basement. The lockbox contained documents that were relevant to certain legal questions that Mara might, if she chose, wish to pursue. Mara sat on the edge of the stripped bed for a long time. The rain continued. The grandfather clock downstairs, which had been stopped at 3:47 for as long as she could remember, made a sound. A single, resonant note, not quite a chime, more like a clearing of its throat. She went downstairs. She looked at the clock. It read 3:47. She watched it. At 3:48, the minute hand moved. She stood in the hallway for a long time, listening to the clock tick for the first time. It had a measured, deliberate sound, the sound of something that had been waiting to resume. The rain had let up. Through the hall window, the November garden was silver dark, the bare branches of the old oak gathering the faint ambient light of the cloud-covered sky. She would call her mother in the morning. She would call a lawyer. She would open the lockbox and read everything in it. And then she would make decisions, one at a time, about what to do with what she knew. Tonight, she would stay. She went back upstairs, past the photographs, past the woman who wore her face in someone else's decade, past the grandfather clock ticking away 15 years of stopped time at the bottom of the stairs. She went to the blue room.
She remade the bed with sheaths she found in the linen closet, white, crisply ironed, smelling of lavender. She lay down in her grandmother's room and looked at the white ceiling and listened to the house settle around her. Old houses do this. They expand and contract with temperature. They creak and shift along the lines of their foundations. They make the sounds of buildings that have been standing long enough to have opinions about it. This house had many opinions. It expressed them steadily through the night. At some point, she slept. She did not dream, or did not remember dreaming. In the morning, the sun came through the white curtains, and the garden outside was
covered in a thin frost that made everything sharp-edged and bright. Mara stood at the window and drank coffee she had found in the kitchen. Real coffee, the good kind, because Eleanor had always bought the good kind, and looked at the garden. She had asked a question she had carried for 15 years. The house had answered. The answer was complicated and incomplete and would take a long time to fully understand, and it had arrived too late and through the wrong messenger and under circumstances that were imperfect in every way. But it was the truth. It was, finally, the truth. She finished her coffee. She went down to the basement. She put the small iron key in the lock. She opened it.